Have you ever wondered if your phone really knows when you're driving? I don't just mean when you're in a moving car, but when you're actually the one behind the wheel. Well, it turns out a team of researchers figured out a super clever way for it to do just that. And all it takes are the sensors your phone already has.
So why even bother with this? Well, we all know that distracted driving is a huge deal. But when you look at the numbers, especially when phones are involved, the problem is just staggering.
Every single year, distracted driving involving a cell phone is a factor in nearly 1,000 deaths. Think about that. That's a massive number of tragedies that could potentially be prevented. And it really shows you why this research is so important.
And that brings up the big question, right? If your phone knows it's in a car that's moving, why can't an app just flip a switch, go into a safe mode, and stop the driver from texting? Well, it's actually a lot trickier than it sounds. And this, right here, is the real challenge. See, current apps are pretty good at knowing you're in a car, but what they can't figure out is if you're in the driver's seat or just riding shotgun. If you block a passenger's phone by mistake, the app is just annoying, but if you fail to block the driver's phone, well then, it's totally useless.
So, how in the world do you solve a problem like that? The answer, and this is the really cool part, comes from a basic law of physics that you've felt every single time you've been in a car making a turn.
It all boils down to this thing called centripetal acceleration. Just picture yourself on a merry-go-round. If you're near the center, it's pretty easy to hold on. But the farther out you go, the harder you have to grip, right? That feeling of being flung outwards is your body reacting to the force that's constantly pulling you in towards the center. And the key is, the farther from the center, the stronger that pull gets. Believe it or not, the exact same thing happens inside your car. When you make a left turn, the passenger is on the outside of that curve. They have to travel a slightly wider circle than the driver, who's on the inside. And because of that, their phones actually experience slightly different amounts of force. So here's the absolute key. This difference is always consistent. On a left turn, the driver's phone is always closer to the center of the turn. On a right turn, it's the opposite. This tiny but totally measurable physical difference is the secret sauce for the entire system. Okay, but how can your phone, just sitting in your pocket, actually feel these tiny forces? Well, it uses a couple of incredibly sensitive little tools that are already built right in. Let's meet the toolkit. You've got the accelerometer, which, you guessed it, measures acceleration forces, like that sideways pull you feel on a turn. And then you have the gyroscope, which measures rotation. It's the gyroscope that tells the system, hey, we're turning now, and we're turning to the left. But there's a small catch. I mean, think about it. Your phone could be upside down in a cup holder, flat on the seat, sideways in your pocket. Its idea of up and forward has nothing to do with the cars. So the system's first job is a bit of digital gymnastics. It has to use all that sensor data to figure out how it's oriented, and then line itself up with the car's direction of travel. All right, so the phone knows when it's turning, and it knows which way is forward. Now let's see how it puts all the clues together to make the final call, driver or passenger. The logic here is just so elegant. First, the gyroscope says we're turning left. Second, the accelerometer measures the sideways force right where the phone is. Now here comes the brilliant part. To know if that force is a lot or a little, you need something to compare it to. So third, it gets a reference measurement from a tiny plug-in adapter that tells it the force at the very center of the car. And finally, it just compares its own reading to that reference point. And that comparison tells it everything. Let's go back to our physics. During that left turn, the driver is closer to the center, so their phone feels less force than the car's center point. The passenger is farther away, so their phone feels more force. It's that simple. By just checking if its measurement is higher or lower than the car's center, the phone knows exactly which side of the car it's on. Now, this all sounds great on paper, but, the real world is messy. You've got bumps, vibrations, sudden stops. Does this physics trick actually hold up during a real commute? To find out, the researchers really put it through its paces. They didn't just drive around an empty parking lot. No, they ran a ton of tests during daily commutes in the middle of Hoboken, New Jersey, a place with tons of traffic, tight turns, and complex city streets. And the results were pretty amazing. After just one turn, the system was already hitting about 90% accuracy. After 3 turns, like the number of turns it takes to just get out of a parking lot, it shot up to 97%. And by the time the car made 5 turns, the accuracy was basically perfect. In fact, during these intense Hoboken tests, the system hit a peak accuracy of 99.1%. That is an incredibly high level of certainty, and it proves that this whole physics-based idea is more than strong enough for the real world.
But wait a second, what about when you're just cruising down a long straight highway? There are no turns, so that whole centripetal force thing won't work. Well, the system has a pretty smart answer for that too. For those times when you're just driving straight, the system switches over to a backup method. It uses the phone's built-in magnetometer, that's the same sensor that makes your compass app work, and it listens for the car's unique electromagnetic field, or EMF. Because of the engine, the speakers, all the wiring, a car creates a sort of magnetic fingerprint. And that signal is just a little bit different on the driver's side than it is on the passenger side.
So what you get is a two-part system that covers all the bases. The main method, using physics and turns, is perfect for city and local driving. The backup method, using those electromagnetic fields, kicks in on long, straight roads like highways. They work together to give you full coverage, no matter how you're driving.
The end result is a system that can figure out, with a really high degree of certainty, whether a phone is on the driver's side or the passenger side in pretty much any situation you can throw at it. It's a beautiful combination of pure physics and the car's own electronic signature.
And that kind of leaves us with a really fascinating final thought. We started this whole journey talking about how to solve distracted driving, but this kind of technology is about so much more than that. It's about giving your phone a much deeper understanding of its physical environment. So if your phone knows exactly where you're sitting inside a car, what else could it do? What other smart, helpful, or maybe even life-saving things could that make possible?